Hi, welcome to the Lunapod, where we talk all things K-pop. I'm Brooke.
And I'm Raquel. Welcome to episode 2, the types of biases. We've already talked about what the word bias means, and we made a discovery as we were talking one day that we realized that there's different types of biases. You have your main bias. Bias is a very common term, but it's also kind of an umbrella term because I feel like you can have a bias that you don't necessarily like, is this truly a bias? It might be a bias, just not
your main one within the group.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't necessarily consider them a wrecker.
Yeah, that's why we came up with the different kinds of biases.
So we kind of put them into different categories, and the different types that we have are ones that we find comforting, ones that we have appreciation for, find aesthetically pleasing, want to protect, or find some kind of happiness from them, or consider them as friend material, and there is of course boyfriend material ones.
And also kind of like a kin, or have a kindred spirit with. So let's start off with talking about our top biases at the moment, because this changes all the time. Sometimes certain groups won't be in your mind at the moment because they're not releasing things, or other groups are catching your attention more. So this changes all the time. And honestly, this is what separates a bias from an alt bias, because an alt bias is going to be on your mind all the time regardless.
Yeah, they're going to constantly be in that category for
right.
you.
So as of right now in time, I'd say my top biases are Taemin, who I also consider my alt bias, Songhwa, who I consider a borderline alt bias, to be completely honest, and Miyavi from The Last Rockstars.
And mine would be Yoongi, who I consider my alt bias, Hanse from Victon, and Changbin from Stray Kids.
And so again, just to restate here, an ultimate bias is going to be what you consider all of these different types of biases at once, or
they're
just
basically like encompass all of this for you.
Yeah, they are on your mind all the time, and they're
checking all the boxes. And you may be thinking, aren't those just wreckers? Not at all. To us, at least, like, wreckers are people that legitimately come close to messing with your bias within that group, actually threatening that position for you.
These, however, don't do that. It's just like a different kind of bias in a way. So talking about biases really quickly, we're going to get into more depth of the types of biases in just a minute, but we need to talk about how biases are formed. Sometimes a bias can come really quickly.
For me, when we were watching Kingdom, the second I saw DK from iKON, that was so immediate.
Yeah.
I saw that man, I was like, him. Like, so immediate. I was like, holy crap, who is that?
I remember we paused the video and went on the Pinterest immediately.
I died. Like, I mean, I remember them walking into the room, and I already thought he was attractive when they were performing, but it was that certain scene where he was wearing, it was like a certain cardigan that had like flowers on it or something, and I was like, wow, him.
That's it. No, this also happened to me with Songhwa from ATEEZ. The second I laid eyes on that man, it was over. I think it was for like in Deja Vu, I was like, wait a minute, catching my attention. And then the vampire version was when I was like, who is this pink-haired god? Also, this happened to me very, very recently from Miyavi from The Last Rockstars. The second I saw him, I was like, whoa. And he's been on my brain for the past solid 2-3 days nonstop. Now, bias can also, sometimes it takes a while for them to pop into your life. I've talked about this before, but Jimin from BTS took a hot second for me to find. And that's also okay. There's some groups even now where I'm still like, is that a bias? And it kind of changes.
Yeah.
And, sometimes it takes a second.
And then sometimes your bias may honestly change based on what you need in that moment. Whenever I was first getting into BTS, my bias was originally RM. It has changed to Yoongi now, but at the moment I realized that that's what I needed. I needed June and the comfort that I get from him. And obviously if you're into BTS, you know how knowledgeable and very poetic he is when he talks, and just with his music, very comforting thing to me. But then later on, I moved to Yoongi, love him. But at the time, like, I needed June, so.
Yeah.
And kind of how we said before, where you might not quickly pick a bias, you might be OT whatever. So if the group has 7 members, you'd be OT 7. If they have 4 members, OT 4. So that means you basically love all of them equally and don't necessarily have one that you consider quote unquote favorite.
Sometimes you don't feel the need to choose a bias, and that's totally valid. That's totally fine. I personally don't have a bias.
I feel like you're more open to being OT, whereas me, like, I love having a favorite. I'm like, oh, I need to find my person.
Yeah. It's totally fine whether you want to find your person or be OT. It's totally fine. But for me, with ONEUS and Ace, I am very OT with them. I don't really have a set bias. And again, that might change in the future, but for as long as I have known them until this day, I don't necessarily have a set bias.
There are also things called bias lines, and that can be a group of members that you consider your bias within a group. Examples of these would be ones that are more established within every K-pop group. So every K-pop group will have a rap line, a maknae line, dance line, kind of their positions or roles within their group. I consider myself a rap line bias with BTS, so that would be J-Hope, RM, and Yoongi. But my actual bias for the group is Yoongi.
That's like another example. You have a bias, but you also have other bias, kind of like exactly. A bias line.
And then you might have ones that are unique to each group. So BTS will have 3J, J-Hope, Jimin, Jungkook. And then Stray Kids has 3RACHA, Bangchan, Changbin, Han. They kind of have set units that they'll work in occasionally, whether that's like producing, just doing videos, dancing, etc. Right. And so you can have like those as technical like bias lines as well. And there's some that are more fan-made, just for fun, and a big one that we both love so much is ATEEZ's Demon line, which is Sun, Sungwa, Hongjoong.
Amazing. Love the Demon line. Big Demon line fans here. But getting more into depth about the different types of biases, we have what's called a comfort bias, or what we like to call a comfort bias. For me, I've talked previously about this before, but Connie from ONEUS or Yuno from ATEEZ, they just give such comforting vibes. Another idol that fits very much into this line for me is Jin from BTS.
And ones that I find comfort in, I already did mention RM from BTS, but another one is Sungwon from 17. I really wasn't into 17 crazy up honestly until we went to their concert. To be completely honest, like we went to their concert kind of out of nowhere, and he just had such a big role in it, and just I don't know, he was just so good. He just made me happy when I watched him, and so I just find a lot of comfort in him now since the concert. And then of course there's ones that we'll have appreciation for. I cannot speak enough on Mark from NCT.
He's incredible.
He's everywhere.
He is everywhere.
I feel like this boy is becoming like the face of K-pop because he's in so many different groups and he's constantly working. I don't know how he's
functioning.
Honestly, he's going from one comeback to the next. He really somehow gets through it all. And then another one from 17's Hoshi. I'm a big choreo person, and he's an amazing performer.
We just recently rewatched the Cheers music video, and seeing him is...
I know, that one's good.
Oh, he is just amazing. Some appreciation biases for me is going to be Jungwon from ENHYPEN. I feel like another appreciation bias for both of us, honestly, is Hongjoong from ATEEZ. Definitely. We absolutely love Hongjoong. I think a lot of people are surprised when we don't say Hongjoong is our bias for ATEEZ, because we talk about him all the time. And then another huge appreciation bias that I have is Jun from ACE. Another type of bias we have on our list is what we call an aesthetically pleasing bias. Felix from Stray Kids, for example, is one of these biases for me. He is a top visual in K-pop.
Mine would be Jaehyun from NCT, and then I am from Monsta X. Obviously, they're both aesthetically pleasing, like beautiful, but in different ways. So Jaehyun's, honestly, if I had to make like a top 5 most attractive K-pop idol, like he'd be in there.
That's fair.
Like, he's like very fair. Like he's just stunning. Like with IM, yes, he's attractive, but it's almost just an aesthetic that he gives off.
Yeah, his persona in general.
Yeah, like his persona. I feel like that's what's so pleasing to me about him. And then there's the people and the biases that we want to protect. So both of us have Sonu from ENHYPEN on here. He's precious.
He is precious. I just like every motherly instinct comes out in me when I see him. It
really does. Oh my gosh. Like he's just the biggest ray of sunshine and I just want to eat him up. Another one of mine is Taehyung from BTS. I don't know. I just feel a connection with this boy. He gives off that feeling of like knowing him in a deeper way.
Yeah.
And so, like, I don't know, there's that kind of connection where I want to protect him.
Another type of bias that we have is what we call the happiness bias, or the best friend material, BFF material. For me, I'm going to choose Wooyoung from ATEEZ as an example of this, because I feel like he would be the best person to hang out with. I want to be his best friend. He would just be constantly be laughing and smiling with him.
Like, you'd have a lot of fun with him.
Exactly. But, like, also when you needed to get deep down and serious, like, he would be so genuinely there for you.
I think so, too. Like, mine would be Jin from BTS, which is funny because you had him as your comfort one. I'm like, you need to find comfort in your friends.
Yeah.
And he just literally he like cracks me the hell up. Like, he's literally like, so funny. Anytime, like, I'm upset, like, I can literally watch his live streams. Especially the recent one where he's, like, playing games. Like, what is he doing?
He's so funny.
And then we have our boyfriend material biases,
which we will be doing a whole episode about delusional boyfriend material.
Yeah.
But for this, with the bias, it's just they have boyfriend potential. Like it's...
Yeah, like if in a real life scenario, we think that they would be a good boyfriend. So mine are Changbin from Stray Kids and Hansei from Victon. I never shut up about these two.
That's fair, yeah.
Like, I mean, it kind of makes sense, but Changbin and I'm telling you, it'd work.
It would, yeah.
Like,
There's something we just click with.
Yeah, like, I see him and I'm like, that is boyfriend material.
Boyfriend material bias is very close to old bias, I feel like.
Definitely.
Because...
And, like, that's why Hansei is...
Exactly.
There, like, he pushes that sometimes.
Well, and that's why Songhwa is in this group for me as well. Like, he is absolute boyfriend material. Just everything about him I can see being very compatible with. Now, the last type of bias that we're going to talk about is what we call a kin bias, or someone that you're kindred in spirit with. Songhwa is also in this line for me, and it's just because, kind of like what I just talked about, very compatible. We just have a lot of very similar interests. But I also consider Beomgyu from TXT or Sungmin from Stray Kids as a kin bias as well. Again, we just have very similar interests, and I feel like our personalities get along very well, or sometimes very scarily similar.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I chose mine as well. So I have Ito from ONEUS and Yoongi from BTS. I'm a very introverted person, kind of reserved, might come off wrong to some people, but like deep down, even though if I don't want to admit it, I'm nice. I'm like, I can be sweet and caring in my own ways. It might not be like as obvious as other people's. I feel like I kind of relate to them. And when we were at the ONEUS concert, there's just a time all of them were like giggly and laughing and just talking, and Ito was over to the side just standing there, and I'm like, that is literally me. If I was in a K-pop group, that is me.
Yes. Kind of like we've talked about in a previous episode, there is a bias out there for absolutely everyone.
There really, really is.
Now, we're going to be taking a quick break with our new segment called What's Currently Trending on Twitter. So the first thing that was trending on Twitter was hashtag Hyuna and Dawn. If you aren't aware, Hyuna and Dawn recently announced that they were breaking off their engagement, and it looks like recently on Twitter it was trending because people were assuming that they got back together after deleting some posts. Spoiler alert, they are not back together. Kind of heartbreaking, to be completely honest, but you know, it's life. That's life, and I hope that they're doing okay, you know, but that was trending.
And then the newest thing right now was the fact that Yoongi will be going on tour.
You came into my room freaking out about this.
I did. I was like, I was like, I've been duped. Yeah. I said that over and over again because he's touring and it's only like a few places. But even in the US, like, it's so far away, and in a month that we're already having plans.
We're so busy right around then.
Oh my gosh, I could have died on the spot when that thing said August D tour. I'm like, what do you mean August D tour?
He hasn't
that was
released
so out of
anything.
Nowhere.
Exactly. What is he trending?
So
like,
I guess
what is he touring for?
So I have no idea. This is like very out of nowhere. And so I'm like, okay, are they gonna release his album during this time?
They have to.
Like, I'm just so curious.
Yeah, me too.
I can't even imagine how hard it would be to get tickets. I'm gonna pop on there and just look. But I know I'm not gonna buy any, but
Whew. I think we should trend hashtag Yoongi coming to Orlando.
Oh, honestly.
Alrighty, jumping right back into our episode today. Another important thing to talk about when we're talking about biases is wreckers. Now, as we've already said, wreckers are different from biases, but I think there's also some levels to wreckers as well.
And like we said earlier, wreckers are ones that truly threaten that bias position for whatever group that you're talking about. So for me, Yoongi 100% wrecked RM, and he is now my bias. So that completely changed.
I don't know if I've ever had like a true
flip
wrecker.
Like that.
Yeah, or like a flip to wrecker to bias. But when I was trying to discover if I had a bias in Ace, every single member of Ace was technically wrecking each other to be in my bias line. Eventually came to the conclusion that boys, stop fighting. You're all amazing. I'm OT. And then, you know, also sometimes my Stray Kids bias will change on emotions, but I'll get into that in a second because another important thing to mention while we're talking about wreckers, because those are like a true wrecker, but you also have wreckers that kind of just catch your attention at the moment. They're kind of fleeting. So these change constantly. Wreckers change constantly anyway, or they can, but they'll like be really in your attention and then they'll kind of fizzle out, and you still have an appreciation for them, but they're not like wrecking you as hard as they were for a second.
Yeah.
For example, recently, IN or Jongin from Stray Kids has been incredibly catching my attention, and I think I can officially say that he is, for now, my bias of Stray Kids. That's so hard for me to say sometimes because my Stray Kids bias truly has been all over the place for so long now, but he has been catching my attention a lot lately.
And for me, mine would be Doyoung from NCT. I am very, like, strong Johnny girl, and I feel like when you're a Johnny girl, you don't, like, really stray away from that.
Yeah, that's fair.
But, like, Doyoung just constantly catches my attention, whether that's looks, vocals, and I'm not usually a vocal girl either, but he just constantly catches my attention, and I'll get really interested.
Well,
but, like,
especially after the concert, too.
Well, yeah, like, when we were on the way, I was thinking about, like, I'm glad I'm a Johnny girl, because if I wasn't, like, I could flip to be a Doyoung girl in a heartbeat.
Yeah, that's I remember you saying that.
Yeah,
like,
I was like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh, deep down, am I? No.
No, in another lifetime.
Yeah, in another lifetime, I'm Doyoung biased. In my opinion, some of the most intense wreckers are the ones that we consider talent wreckers.
Yeah.
These are people that are just so insanely talented, you can't keep your eyes off of them. You're just constantly consuming their content to where you're like, wait, is this my bias?
No, exactly. This
like,
it messes with my mind of like,
yes.
wait, oh no, is this a bias right now? I think it's just a talent wreck.
It is. I had mentioned earlier I was more like rap line biased. So I had a solid frame of time where I was so into J-Hope and I was convinced, like, I'm like, yeah, this is my bias. I just love that man.
Yeah, he's like amazing.
So much.
No, I appreciate J-Hope so
and, like,
much.
Even with his most recent solo stuff, that just confirmed it even more and has made this issue a little more difficult. And another one is Taeyoung from NCT. Similar situation. I literally could not keep my eyes off of him during the concert.
Some talent wrecks for me is definitely Jungho from ATEEZ. That man's vocals and hearing it in person as well was just absolutely insane. And on a similar line, Kihyun from Monsta X was a huge talent wreck for me when we went to their concert. I am not even joking. Yeah, I am not even joking. That man has, I know this is a controversial statement right now, he has the best vocals in K-pop.
I stand by that.
Yeah, like,
that's my man.
Period. I will die on that hill. I am so sorry if you disagree.
Like, if you're even questioning that, like, literally just listen to his solo music.
Yes, listen to his
solos. He has too many albums out.
In person, too, because I knew he had good vocals from listening to him, but in concert, that man's voice is insane. And there was a point where he was singing and he, like, took his earpiece and was just belting, and I'm like, wow, man, you are talented. Also, we've talked about this before, and you can go listen to our ONEUS concert review to get a little bit more of this, but Hwanwoong from ONEUS is another huge talent wreck. He is just absolutely incredible to watch. Like we've said before, can't keep your eyes off. Just absolutely amazing. We hope you enjoyed listening to our Types of Biases episode. Again, we think this was pretty monumental of us to discover, so we think it might be helpful for you too, and just to kind of ease the tension if you're having trouble choosing a bias or you feel like they might be bias potential, but you're just struggling. Don't worry, you know, I'm pretty sure there is types of biases out there, and you can love as many people as you want. No pressure. Before we tune out for today, we're going to do our song of the moment.
And it'll be Tic Tac by 8turn. This group just debuted January 30th, and we're instantly obsessed.
They're so good. We call them our hat boys because they have the most incredible hats.
Yeah, if you watch like their comeback stages and their music videos, they're wearing just cute hats. Like, yeah, it was really cute.
They are, but the song Tic Tac is so good and so entertaining. Definitely go check it out if you haven't heard it yet. Thank you so much for listening. As always, you can find us on any social media platform, including TikTok and Twitter at thelunapod, or you can follow us on Instagram at thelunapodcast, where you can get super up-to-date information on our podcast releases, behind the scenes content, and other shenanigans. Or you can head over to YouTube at thelunapod and watch some vlogs that we've thrown together recently. They're really cute. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Bye.